It's actually time for Alan Rhodes' essay. Alan is a regular guest on the Chuckanet Radio Hour and also writes pointed and witty columns for the Cascadia Weekly. Let's have a hand for Alan Rhodes.
Last night, I was looking back over the first novel in the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series and thinking about the character of Precious Ramotswe. Precious is bright, creative, compassionate, and above all, she is a very wise woman, and her wisdom serves her and others very well. But I kept getting distracted from my reading, thinking back to a wonderful trip that my wife Susan and I and our good friends Tom and Barbara took several years ago to the home of Precious Ramotswe, the beautiful country of Botswana. Waking up in our tent on the first morning, we walked over to Tom and Barbara's tent to see if they were ready to head down to the lodge for breakfast. Now, these tents had wooden floors with dozens of knotholes, and Barbara, who has a terrible fear of snakes, had plugged every single knothole with wadded up Kleenex. It looked like it had been snowing in there. There was a lot of shuffling and scraping before she opened the door. Kept going on, and finally she opened up. "What took so long?" I said. "Oh," she said, I had our duffel bags pushed up the door against the door to keep any animals from getting in." "Oh, excellent plan, Barbara," I said. "No elephant could get past that duffel bag." "Well, it would slow him down," she said, "and I'd get out the other side." "What might happen," I said, "was in your panic you'd kick out the Kleenex plugs and the snakes would get you." That night, as Susan and I were falling asleep, our tent started shaking, and it was indeed an elephant. He was using the side of the tent to scratch his rather ample rear end, and that would have been okay except the part where the elephant farted. It was really loud, and it went on forever. "What did you have for dinner?" Susan said. "Me," I said, "I'm 130 pounds, barely 5.5 feet tall. You think I could do that?" Our African days were spent out in a Land Rover, spotting hippos, elephants, giraffes, zebras, lions, wildebeests, and spectacularly beautiful birds. One afternoon, we parked 25 feet away from where 3 lion cubs were playing, watched over by a sleepy male lion while Mama was off somewhere. These cubs defined cute and goofy. They romped, they rolled, they wrestled, and they played King of the Mountain, using the big lion as the mountain. Every so often he'd yawn, cuff the latest mountain king away, and go back to his nap. We stayed all afternoon and headed back to the lodge late in the day, but with plenty of time to get back before dark, and we would have if it hadn't been for the broken fan belt. So there we sat. The guide radioed to the lodge. They said it would be an hour. We were in total darkness in an open Land Rover while the night filled up with the sounds of animals and rustling in the nearby bush. We got back to the lodge safely, and over dinner, Tom, Barbara, and I were talking about how scared we had been. Susan wasn't saying anything. "Weren't you scared?" I asked. "No," she said, "I wasn't." What she said next made such an impression on me that I wrote it down later in my travel journal. She said, "This afternoon with the lions was one of the most beautiful and spiritual experiences of my life. Later, when we sat there in the dark, all I could think about was how blessed I was and how happy I felt. If this turned out to be my last day on earth, I would leave it fulfilled and content. I wasn't going to let anything spoil the magic of my perfect day. I started out by saying that Precious Rhodes is a very wise woman, and it's been my pleasure to know a number of very wise women in my lifetime, and one of them I was lucky enough to marry. For any of you young, unmarried guys out there listening who plan on marrying someday, I'm sure your spouse will have many wonderful qualities, and hopefully you will marry a wise woman. Guys, take it from somebody who has been around for a while. You can learn a lot from them.